Welcome back for another video, everyone. I'm sorry there was a slight hiatus in broadcasting over the last week, but I had 5 concerts in 7 days in 4 different cities. So in short, I literally physically did not have the time to record anything, let alone process it. But it's given me lots of time to think about new topics. So instead you're getting a bumper crop today, and I'm going to make 2 videos today. And this first one we're going to dive into right now is all about the topic of string crossings and the fundamentals of string crossings. So that's what we are going to be taking apart tonight from scratch, and as usual in depth. If you are new to my channel, my name is Julia Morneweg, and here we talk in great detail about all things cello and what makes good cello playing. If you find my videos useful, I'd be really grateful if you could smash that like button, consider subscribing, and now if you really like it, you can even leave me a little tip via the link below. So without further ado, let's get cracking. I recently published a video about all the skills that I teach to my students in their first year of learning. And among those skills was, of course, learning to do good string crossings. Why? Because the quality of your string crossings is something that has a huge impact on the overall quality, overall impression of your playing. Yeah, whether it's sounds kind of very scratchy and jagged, or whether it really starts to sound smooth, controlled and accomplished. So because we can't really play more than usually a few notes without there being a string crossing, it's a fundamental skill that I really teach almost from day one, as soon as we start doing open strings. And it's a skill which we really ought to devote a lot of time to when we are practicing. So let's get started on the actual science behind string crossings, what it is we need to do. The first thing to understand is that the string crossing is not a one moment in time event ever. It's always a process, and that is really the most fundamental thing we need to understand. So the string crossing is not something that happens once you have finished the, let's call it the old note, and then you suddenly cross. It's something that starts much earlier on. Really, we usually use the entire note or bow before the actual crossing to start preparing that movement. And so to demonstrate that a little bit more clearly, I have dug out that's actually one of my spare end pins, but I thought it would serve very well as a giant amplified string to really show what I mean. And the one thing that we really need to make use of in order to achieve smooth string crossings sounds very basic, but it needs to be pointed out, the fact that the string is round. And therefore that obviously means there are many different angles at which we can play on one and the same string. I can be right flat on top of it, I can be to the outside, I can be to the inside, all whilst playing one and the same string. And that is exactly what we need to be doing when we are playing. So how do we control that when we're playing and we're just looking straight down? If you just place your bow on the string, you can roughly see, if you place your bow, let's say on the G string, you can see how much space there is between your bow hair and either one of the neighboring strings. Yeah. So if I absolutely place it flat onto the string, sort of equidistant from both strings, from the D and from the C, I might have sort of a couple of millimeters to either side. Yeah. Which sounds like very little, and that's something we're going to come back to when it comes to, okay, how much, arm movement do we actually need. But it also gives you enough room to play with in terms of which sort of edge of the string are you on. Yeah. So that is one initial exercise which I teach. So again, coming back to my giant string here, and which is obviously something we want to try on the cello. So trying to first of all play flat on the string, play a little bit to that side, play a little bit to that side. And as you can see here, I'm controlling that with really the small sort of knuckles in my fingers. And that's why it's so important to have a nice flexible bow hold. Yeah, I can't be at that point using my whole arm because I'll have crossed 3 different strings by that point. Yeah, so that's the first thing to practice. So if you look down, place your bow on the string, look down. Okay, so now it's that way. Now I'm releasing it a little bit towards the C string, bring it back up, and now try to go a little bit closer to the D string. So that's one thing to experiment, just to get that spatial awareness. And then while you're playing the string, you can try the same thing. You go a bit closer to the C, you go a bit closer to the D, but without actually crossing yet. You can see that while I'm on one and the same string, I can create these little waves, see, just with tiny little bit of flexion in the fingers. Yeah, so that's a good fundamental exercise. For all of that, the hand has got to be really, really, really nice and soft. Yeah, if your fingers are locked here, if any of this is locked, it's going to be very, very wooden, and you're going to get very rough crossings. So you first of all try that, just to get that awareness that there is more than one side of the string where you can play. Okay, once you've got that, then we're again starting at the heel, and bit by bit we are going to go closer and closer and closer to the neighboring string, in this case the D string, until we make contact. So watch your bow here. You see it's coming closer until you have that very brief moment where you have both strings. And then you switch over. So that's the first thing, and there you can really see that it's a process. When you just now look at my bow, you see how bit by bit it approaches. So it's that kind of almost sort of saucer shape, right? Or that sort of banana shape. Yeah, that. So it's not that. It's very, very, very continuous. Okay, so once you've got that, you can then try to do different patterns. Obviously, you can try it with separate bows and the same in reverse, of course. Or with bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. And you can also try different patterns. So approach and catch. Yeah, so you can do that on all different string combinations. So that's really the first exercise that you want to try. Now, you're of course going to ask me, what happens if I need to cross 2 strings or even 3 strings? Well, we have already established that everything is about a long gradual process. So we need to anticipate. Yeah, so if I want to cross, let's say from G to A, you can see almost the moment my down bow starts, it's almost like I've sort of stepped onto a trampoline. It straight away propels me upwards, right? Starts the moment the note starts. It's not and then I'm crossing. That would feel and would sound really, really uncomfortable. So straight away I'm starting to make my way up. So lots of different patterns there. One book that I would really recommend for that is the Feuillard daily exercises, and in the last chapter towards the end of the book you get lots of string crossing patterns. I think it's chapter 34, 35, 36, somewhere around there. And there you get first of all 2 strings, 3 strings, and then 4 strings. So you obviously first of all want to try to sort of master the 2 string patterns, and then progress from there onwards. And that brings me to my next point, which is how much activity, how much movement in the arm do we actually need? And the truth is less than you think. The mistake that most beginners make is that the movements are far too big and far too brutal. As we discussed earlier already, from one string to the other, your difference here in level, we're talking a couple of millimeters. So to make up a couple of millimeters, you do not need, sort of heavy duty, sort of what I call wind farms here. Yeah, you don't need that. So always try with a string crossing, how little movement can I get away with? Yeah. So if you are crossing quickly back and forth between two different strings, for instance, what you want to do first is you want to try and find the arm level for both by playing a double stop. So play the open string, catch both of them. So that now means if you can do that, your arm is in a good position for both strings. And from there onwards, we start to deviate ever so slightly to each side, like sort of very small seesaw here again, using our fingers. And really see how little can I get away with. And you can hear that way the crossings are really smooth. So perhaps in the coming weeks I might actually make some specific videos on these feuillard exercises to really dissect those, but for now those are really the absolute basics of string crossings that I want you to practice. And it's always worth pointing out that these individual skills really need drilling over and over and over again. It's not done with doing it once and hoping that it works. To get this to automaticity, it takes a lot of really dedicated practice. Started on the open string, obviously, and then a good progression from there, for instance, is to start playing, for instance, scales, and every time you have a crossing, really make that the smoothest crossing you can find. So that is really always the progression. Drill it on the open string alone, then try it in a controlled environment such as a scale. And then from there, you know, progress to finding some studies, and then once all of that has really been done diligently, once you get to the pieces, it should be much more in the system. So happy practicing. As usual, I hope you are finding this helpful. And if you have any questions or comments, stick them in the comments below, and we'll have a chat about it. See you soon for another one. Cheerio.